welcome to all of you coming. I hope thanks for the attendance that we've got, which is brilliant. I'm one of the careers managers at University Career Service. I'm responsible for science, a bit of science and engineering, and I'm delighted to have Fergus with us today, who is, he's construction director with Multiplex, and he's been responsible for that fantastic building that we have called the James McCune Learning Hub, not the Jimmy. We're not allowed to call it that, are we? But he's responsible for that, which doesn't mean that he's been out with a trowel and building all the bricks necessarily, although I don't know if you've done any of that, Fergus. Did you do any of that?
Well, believe it or not, I did a vocational course, so I did an HND and have used a trowel and laid bricks as part of my HND when I was first in the industry.
Well, there you go. And I suppose that means that it's always good to have done that, because then when you ask people to do something, you know what it is you're asking them to do. Absolutely. So that's invaluable. Sorry, I'm stealing your thunder already, but we'll get on to that. So just to give you a bit of background on Fergus, he's got over 30 years of experience in the construction industry, and he's progressed his career from doing his HND and becoming a site engineer during his time with Wimpey Construction to construction director with Multiplex. And during that period, he's seen significant changes in the industry in respect of health and safety, quality, sustainability, social value, which have improved the output and image of the industry. I think that's definitely true. Since I've been a careers advisor, definitely. He's worked on several projects, including the Queen Elizabeth University Hospital and the University of Glasgow for our James McCune building. And it says here that he sees his role within construction to deliver projects which contribute to wider society and ensure that the industry recognises and adapts to the greater demands placed upon us by the current social and environmental challenges. So Fergus, I don't really know where to start, but I'm going to ask you, because we all walk past, well, when we're on campus, we walk past that fantastic building every day. Could you just tell us what it's been like to be involved in Glasgow University to produce such a brilliant, iconic building? What's your role been in that, and how's that been for you?
Yeah, so my role, I kind of oversee all the construction activities. So we had a team delivering that job led by a guy called Jim Sterling. But one of the benefits that I have is that I was involved pre-contract as well. So sitting down with the planner and working out the programme and so on for design and construction, working with the designers to understand the design and any complexities in the design, to understand temporary works and the like, because there were significant temporary works on James McCune Smith that people may or may not be aware of, and then making sure that we have a plan and that we deliver to that plan. So just to touch on a couple of the temporary works things, I think everyone will recognise that the level from University Avenue is completely different to the level of University Place, or University Gardens rather. And there are, to mitigate that, there's a contiguous piled wall, so piles piled side by side all the way along University Gardens that effectively allow us to then dig down and have the level below. So that was a temporary works piece, but actually through mine and the planner's input, we got that designed into the permanent works. And actually the building on University Garden side is built off the contiguous piled wall.
Right.
Similarly, the lecture theatre, you'll notice that one side of it's actually 10 degrees off the plumb. And to build steelwork 10 degrees off the plumb, let me tell you, is a real challenge, because everybody wants to build everything vertically. So there was significant temporary works there to allow it to be built off the plumb. And then as you load it, there were jacks that jacked against the forces to keep it in its position until we had the concrete frame round about it, and then we were able to release it.
That sounds very complicated. I do remember, walking past the site at the beginning, and you seemed to be doing loads of stuff on the ground. I mean, I'm not an engineer or a construction person, but it was an amazing job. Could I ask you? We're obviously a lot of focus just now is on sustainability going forward and things changing. I mean, does anything about how you built the James McCune Learning Hub demonstrate how construction's changing and becoming more sustainable. Can you talk me through some of those things?
Yeah, I think the design piece, there's a recognition that the lecture theatre had to have line of sight to the screens and to the lecturer and so on. And if any of the students on the call have been in the big lecture theatre, you couldn't manage that with concrete. So concrete wouldn't span the distances that were required. So there was the steel frame there, but they effectively wrapped it in concrete. And concrete gives you the kind of thermal mass of the building, so there's less requirement for heating and less requirement for cooling. And you know, these are things that have been developed through trying to minimise energy usage and so on. The solar shading that I'm sure everyone has seen on University Avenue side, the kind of amber coloured fins that come down with the perforations in them. So again, they are part of the sustainability element. Photovoltaics on the roof. So there's PVs on the roof that generate power that is used for, I think it's used in the lighting circuits and so on, not things you can draw a lot of power from, but areas that you draw power. And that there's actually, believe it or not, underneath the entrance area of University Gardens next to Boyd Orr, there's a rainwater recovery system. So there is a sprinkler tank there, but beneath and to the side of the sprinkler tank, there's a rainwater recovery system that uses the grey water for, amongst other things, flushing toilets and so on. So these kind of things weren't prevalent when I started out in construction, but are becoming more and more actually the norm. But really, you know, from a sustainability angle, really very clever.
Yeah, absolutely. I suppose that brings me on to when you think back to the skills that you required when you started in the industry and the skills that are required now, how have skill sets changed? Have they changed, and how have they changed? And how, so if you're looking for different things in people, could you maybe tell us about that? And maybe even if any of these are particularly due to the move towards more sustainable practices going forward, could you maybe talk us through that?
Yeah, I think when I started out, civil engineering was just civil engineering, and that was it. And you either went and worked in a design office or went and worked for a contractor. But we had some students around the site today, and they're doing civil engineering with architecture or civil engineering and sustainability and so on. So I think the industry's recognised the need for the kind of diversification, I guess, and adding those kind of skills. And again, when I started out, we did a bit of health and safety and a bit of quality, and there was no such thing as environment or sustainability, you know. So you know, that's been good. I think now we have sitting within our teams, we have an environmental guy within our team who said to me that he's actually looking for an assistant. So if there's anybody who has graduated or is near graduating or whatever, then get your pen and paper ready. His name's Callum Scott, with 2 L's, and he's got a Multiplex email address as well, although you find him in LinkedIn. But he's looking for some help. But the roles are different. The understanding of materials is different. You know, recycled materials and how these are specified and how they're used. Design consultants look at cement replacement and so on. So there's a whole gambit there that requires people a lot cleverer than I had to be when I was younger, you know, with a real skill set to be able to pursue a career in construction.
Mm-hmm. What do you think people look for now then? I mean, thankfully you've already, Fergus, just illustrated how people need to be a bit more proactive. You've given out somebody's name in LinkedIn, and you couldn't do that 10, 15 years ago.
No, absolutely.
So how have things changed for you then in terms of that? You know, I just find it quite interesting. What do you look for then in somebody that comes to work for Multiplex?
The academic part is obviously important, but the kind of softer skills and other things that you've achieved away from academia are important as well. And you know, things like I said with students around the site today, and some of them are working. We had a university student from Strathclyde in over the summer, and she'd got herself kind of 3 months worth of experience. It's invaluable to try and get experience, you know, across the industry, whether that be with a contractor or a consultant or whatever. And even if students choose to do the construction areum for a week, That's something that we've supported and that one of our subcontractors, Carey, supports as well, and try and get that experience. But we generally look for people who can come into the graduate programme and we think we can mould into people who would work within our business. It's choosing the right person rather than them having the right the right level of qualification, for want of a better expression, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. So the softer skills are important as well as the technical skills for you.
Yeah, absolutely. The ability to communicate and gather a team and take a team in the direction you want them to go, whilst they recognise that they also want to go in that direction is hugely important. But the young people we have are fabulous, really clever, really switched on, and are quite happy to listen to the old dinosaurs every now and again, because occasionally we have a good idea and here's where we need to go, but don't have the tech savvy to do it. But everybody that's coming through now is just so tech savvy that they're all, they all know what to do.
I know. I think. I don't know. I mean, I'm ancient. I was going to say as well. You're not ancient. I'm ancient. And I just think that even in our work and careers work, IT and all of these, everything technical has impinged on our work hugely. It's a very different. We're trying to do the same thing, but we do it in such different ways. And I'm imagining in construction, it's the same.
Yeah.
I think the constant that is now is change, and the rate of change is increasing.
Yeah.
How do you see? I know it's a difficult question, maybe, Fergus, but how do you see the future? How do you think? Well, do you think the skill set that we've talked about, the technical and the soft skills, are important? How do you see that changing in the future?
I think we're almost going through some of that just now. With all our reporting is on live dashboards. So anyone from our business can go into dashboards and look at those, and we still measure the same things. So we measure energy usage on our sites, and we get our energy from a green energy provider. So all our power is through that. We're trying, HVO, fuels, biofuels, and hydrogen run generators and so on. But we still measure waste. Waste product going off the site and diversion from landfill, and we're now, other than things like asbestos and other nasties, it's all diverted from landfill. But one of the key pieces we did on the Western campus was the cut and fill model, and understanding the material that could go off site, couldn't go off site, and where we place the excavated material so that we minimise both the material going off site and the vehicle movements and all that kind of good stuff. So that's a thing kind of front end that would be done. But I think the live information is the key thing. Nobody's looking through paper reports or anything like that. I just log in, go into Power BI, and anything that I would need to know is there. And my peers in London look on it, and if I've got a red mark against it, it means I've not got a report or I've not met the target. And then I have to strive to get that. But that gives the business a focus on their strategies by way of, we've got a sustainability strategy to 2025 in terms of what we're looking to achieve over there. And it's under the banner 1 decade to act. Right. So we've got targets that we're looking to achieve over that piece.
That's amazing, and I think that it just shows you that the rate of change. I mean, that's all happening right now, and it's going to increase. We've got a question from Dominic. I'll just read that out to you. It's sort of related to what we've just been talking about. He's saying, are sustainability targets in the industry more government driven or incentivized, or are companies taking it upon themselves to varying degrees for company set targets? You just explained how Multiplex is doing that. What's your thought on that?
Yeah, I think there's a bit of both. We're obviously led by legislation, and clients are kind of driven by that legislation as well. So things like BREEAM, for instance, there are areas within BREEAM to use public transport, and one of the questions is, do you have a bus stop within 50 yards of your site? And all that kind of good stuff. But there are obviously the kind of government-led things, but main contractors feed into that. So the contractors obviously have the ear of politicians and say, here as an industry is what we think we can achieve. And then there are obviously kind of targets set from that. The university has set its targets through the projects in terms of quality, safety, environment, and so on. There is a sustainable procurement target, there's a waste target, and there's a third one that I can't, which is pretty bad, that I can't remember off the top of my head. But there are 3 targets, and if we don't meet those, then there's a mechanism under the contract that the university is allowed to withhold a particular quantum of money. So we're not incentivized to meet the targets. We are penalized if we don't meet the targets, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, that's great. Absolutely great. Okay, I mean, I've just read your bio and it's very, very interesting. Would you be able to give us just a brief sort of career path for yourself and just explain how you got to where you are today?
Of course. So I was a trainee engineer with Wimpey Construction. And then one day the senior engineer was off, so I became the engineer. And then senior engineer and kind of sub-agent when the titles were slightly different. And that was over the course of about 7 years. So a lot of back then it was in charge of our own men. So there's myself and a foreman, but we had our own labour, our own bricklayers, our own machine operators, and we just subcontract the steel fixing. But it was at that stage in my career, it was all about getting the setting out right and putting the men to work. The men were all on bonus at the time, so if you get the setting out right, they could make money, and if you got it wrong, they couldn't. So there was a lot of pressure on you there, and I just developed myself there from there into a kind of management position. You know, as I became more senior, I ran Low Moss Prison, which is kind of just on the outskirts of Bishopbriggs. And the prison service are very, very into sustainability. So all the water from the roofs is grey water and used for flushing toilets. They have all their food that goes from the site, from this prison that's not eaten, goes through a unit that takes all the moisture out it, and then the food goes away for reprocessing. They have their own gardens that they grow veg in. People work in the prison, prisoners get a job, and then they work in the grounds team and grow the veg and so on. So they're actually getting kind of rehabilitation in there and kind of back out into society type thing. So I ran that project and learned an awful lot there, and then joined Multiplex to effectively lead the children's hospital construction.
Right. Wow.
And was there for kind of 4.5, 5 years. And then Multiplex were pursuing the opportunity with the university. And I was fortunate enough to work all through the bid, but also went out to Australia to look at what Multiplex does out there by way of education establishments and so on. And then come back and put what I've learned into practice here.
Sounds amazing. What have been some of the challenges you've faced, and how have you overcome some of them?
I think there are challenges on every project to a greater or lesser extent. Sometimes material specification is a challenge, and we have to look at alternative materials, and from a sustainability angle, to try and find the right material to suit the right condition on a project. Sometimes clients can be challenging. And clients look to, when you're building the job, I don't like that, can we change that? But actually it's very, very, it's easy to say we can change it, but you have to go change in design, and that might impact, if we change the light fitting type, as a for instance, that might impact BREEAM and reduce your BREEAM score, or the light fittings might be less expensive, but actually there's a whole life cost that you're replacing the lamps every 2 years and not every 4 years. So all these things get factored into a design, and the university are very good at understanding the design that they've bought and understanding what that gives them, and then not changing. So actually recognising that we recognise the whole life piece, and we recognise that this is the kind of way to go. We've been very fortunate here at the university that we work with them on early contractor involvement on forthcoming buildings. So we did that on Adam Smith Business School, and we've done that on the Institute of Health and Wellbeing. So we're able to, through work with the university and one of the key supply chain, we did something very clever with the facade that shook a lot of money out of it and made the job affordable, whilst
Right.
not doing anything that impacted BREEAM or the use of the building or the planning regulations or anything like that. So that the ability to work with a mature client in a relationship sees benefits both ways, in that we secured the job and the university got it for the budget they were looking to get it for.
Mm-hmm. So I know this is being recorded, but you're saying there the university aren't the worst client that you've worked with then?
No, absolutely not at all. Absolutely not at all.
That's great. Right, we've got another question here, which again, it does actually, it's related to that, what we've just been talking about. So keep the questions coming, folks. That's really helpful. Somebody said, commercial construction buildings are built for clients. Can you tell me about the skills you need to manage their requirements and making sure the building meets sustainability goals? I think that's an interesting question, is it? So how can you, what skills do you need to manage client requirements?
Yeah, I think that clients aspire to be better than their peers. So I'm sure that the University of Glasgow aspires and probably is better than the University of Strathclyde, as a for instance. So but everybody aspires, Multiplex aspire to be better than Langeroog or Lend-Lease or whatever. So if someone has a badge that their building is BREEAM excellent or it meets the WELL standard or whatever, then it's no longer an aspiration of a client, it's a demand of a client. So they'll demand demand in a soft way rather than a hard way, demand that in the contract we get BREEAM excellent. So the James McCune Smith is BREEAM excellent. The Research Hub building is BREEAM excellent, and there are a whole suite of criteria that you have to get points on within BREEAM. So there's management, health, energy, water, transport, materials, recycling, environment, and pollution. So these are all things that you have to meet certain criteria within each of those. And then there's an independent certifier who certifies that you've met that to allow you to gain the BREEAM credit. And to get excellent, you need in excess of 70%.
Right.
Now, some of them you can't get because your building's not on a brownfield site, or it's off a motorway or whatever. So I think that the university will say, I would like to meet all these standards, and then they would work with a PQS firm to say, right, how much is this going to cost me per square meter? And then look at, right, what do we say to the contractor that's the outturn of that's going to be. And it depends on what's in the building, what the cost per square meter will be. So James McCune Smith is less per square meter than the Research Hub building because of the complexities of the services in the Research Hub building to suit the research that's being undertaken.
Mm-hmm.
So
that's great. So in terms of skills, then you've got to be pretty flexible. You've got to be on the ball and able to come up with bespoke solutions for that client, then, haven't you?
Yes, and sometimes more than one solution as well. So sometimes clients look to what they call optioneering. So you give them a suite of options and say, look, here's what we think you can do. How would you want to take that forward? And again, looking at Research Hub building, research is obviously pretty dynamic. It's a significant source of revenue to the university. So we have actually changed labs in the Research Hub building whilst we've been building. So we actually had them to a point where services are in, vents in, and then they say we want a different type of lab. But because of the revenue stream for the university, then we wouldn't say no anyway, but the university really require that. So that's something we've been pretty dynamic and agile on, and work towards different labs. So there are labs in there now that weren't planned to be in there when we started construction. Brilliant.
Okay, great. We've got another couple of questions. This makes it easier for me. What are future prospects? Ifiok has asked this. What are future prospects in terms of the shift from conventional materials to sustainable materials that are environmentally friendly?
When you say future prospects, sorry, what did you mean?
Yeah, I think what the person's getting at is the shift from conventional materials to sustainable materials. Is that going to is that going to lead to prospects for maybe material science or whatever?
Yeah, I think so. I think
Yeah.
R&D on materials is a huge thing. Obviously, there's kind of bad press around about cladding types and so on. So there'll be there certainly is a whole R&D piece on cladding materials at the moment. The whole energy supplies and whatnot in terms of the energy usage and how you deal with that. So I think energy provision plus sustainable materials are opportunities within the kind of sustainability element of construction at the moment.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's great. I think I'm just looked at the clock there and got a wee bit of a fright. I think we're going to have to wrap up in a minute, but we've still got a couple of questions. So I'll just pick one of them. Right, it was mentioned, this is Adrienne has asked, it was mentioned earlier that preserving and renovating buildings to modern standards has a lower footprint than knocking them down and building new sustainable buildings. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think there's a place for that. The buildings that the university have left on the Western campus are probably the only ones they could leave. They would be the only ones that would be fit for purpose in terms of the aspiration of the campus. There was a requirement to save certain materials from the buildings. We've obviously crushed a lot of the material. Any timber floors are taken away and recycled and so on. I can understand wanting to retain buildings, but there's that whole fitness for purpose piece that actually it's often difficult to bring them to a standard that you can get a building warrant and a planning consent and so on. So I think you need to be careful which ones you choose. I think the university have obviously retained some of them in Church Street, including the Elder Chapel, which is a stunning building, and they'll bring back to life. The Tenant Institute's the same. And outpatients, they're trying to do work on that as well. So, but things like the Pontecorvo building on the corner of Church Street and Dumbarton Road, it's coming down, but it's an incredibly small floor plate, although it goes up numerous stories, and probably is just wholly impractical.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, folks. Well, look, I'm sorry, we've got a couple of extra questions there. We don't have time to do them all. I'm thinking we might speak to Simone at the end, and she might be able to see if we could maybe pass them on to you, Fergus. I don't know.
Listen, I've got 5 minutes if you want. I can do that just there. If you.
I would love to, Fergus, but I just need to set up for the next talk. No, so if you don't mind, if I can download these questions and send them your way,
of course.
Yeah, and we can pass those responses on to the students. Yeah, I'll let you wrap up, Stephen.
Thanks. Yeah, just thanks, Simone. Thanks for that. That was great. So, well, I think, to be honest, Fergus, it's been a fantastic to chat to you. I think it's always great to actually meet the person behind something as big as, that building's huge, and it's I've been in it. It's just an amazing space, and it's just kind of inspiring just being in it and thinking, what can we do in this space? Yeah. What can be done in the future as well? So it's going to really have a huge impact on the way university does business, and also in the student experience as well, which is really what we're all about. So I just want to thank you for that, but also really thank you for taking the time to come today and speak to us and give the benefit of your insights to students. So thank you so much, and thank you to everybody who listened and asked questions, and enjoy the rest of your day. We've got plenty more events coming up as well for the fair, but thanks at the moment to Fergus. Thank you so much. Thanks, Fergus.
Yeah, thank you, Stephen. Thank you, everyone. Cheers.
Bye for now.
Yeah, that was great. Thank you so much, Fergus, and thank you, Stephen, for hosting that really, really good chat about, the way that the construction sector is moving towards a more sustainable mindset in their construction. So that was really interesting, and thanks for sharing your stories with us today, Fergus. So just to let you know that in 10 minutes we'll be starting our next Explore a Career in panel talk, and that is Explore a Career in the Hydrogen Economy, where we will have Barry Carruthers, the Hydrogen Director at Scottish Power, chatting with Ian Waugh, the Director of Engineering at First Bus. So they'll be chatting about how they produce the energy and then how it's used within the Scottish buses, particularly around Aberdeen and moreover throughout Scotland. So it should be a great chat. Just want to thank Fergus again, and we'll see everybody in 10 minutes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
go for it.